Now to focus on the big story of the day, this is a claim that has stirred a hornet's nest, even as the Indian government has made it clear that Chinese soldiers were pushed back decisively by the Indian troops on December 9th in Tawang. PDP chief Mehbooba Mufti is not convinced, and this is despite the fact that an earlier undated video from along the LAC also shows how the Indian army gives the Chinese a bloody nose every single time they try a misadventure. Remember, this video of the Indian troops from the LAC shows how the soldiers pushed back the PLA when they tried to scale a peak where India has a post. But what does Mehbooba Mufti say? She insisted today that China is occupying Indian land in Jammu and Kashmir and Arunachal, and that the Indian troops were not allowed to retaliate even as they were beaten up.
I've already said that they have already, occupied our land in Ladakh. They have also occupied land in Arunachal Pradesh as per the, statement given by the BJP member parliament. But unfortunately, BJP is doing nothing about it. Our soldiers have been beaten up by them. They are not allowed to retaliate. This is a very sorry state of affairs. Very sorry.
But what is this assertion based on? When did the PDP chief find that Indian soldiers were stopped from retaliating? Far from what she is claiming, this LAC video from earlier in the year very, very clearly demonstrates Indian soldiers defending their territory stoutly. Armed with clubs and batons, they pushed back the Chinese who were advancing aggressively. Mind you, this is pretty much the same sequence of events that was replicated in Tawang as well. And the Defense Minister has put it in black and white in a statement that was made in the Parliament.
चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है अध्यक्ष महोदय, और इस फेस ऑफ में हाथापाई भी हुई है। भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया अध्यक्ष महोदय, कि हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
जब तक भारतीय जनता पार्टी की मोदी सरकार चल रही है, 1 इंच जमीन पर भी कोई कब्जा नहीं कर सकता। कल अपने सेना के जवानों ने जो 8 की देर रात को और 9 की सुबह को जो वीरता दिखाई है, मैं इसकी बुरी प्रशंसा करता हूं। इन्होंने घुसे हुए सभी लोगों को कुछ ही घंटों में वापस खदेड़ दिया और हमारी भूमि का रक्षण किया है।
The BJP now hitting out at Mehbooba Mufti for insulting the Braves, labeling her a China agent.
कहां से इनको ये बातें सुनाई देती हैं? कौन सी आकाशवाणी से ये सुनती हैं? और क्या ये एजेंट हैं या स्पोक्स पर्सन है चाइना की? हमारी फोर्सेस का सिक्का है पूरे विश्व भर के अंदर। मोदी सरकार के होते हुए पाकिस्तान हो या चाइना हो, जिस प्रकार से उनको खदेड़ा गया हर जगह पर, आज विश्व भी मोदी जी को मानता है। पर क्या कारण है कि महबूबा मुफ्ती एजेंट और स्पोक्समैन का काम चाइना के लिए करती है? ऐसी बेशर्मी से बात करना फोर्सेस के लिए शर्म आनी चाहिए महबूबा मुफ्ती को।
Let me introduce guests joining us this evening. Lieutenant General Raj Kadian, defense expert, Tuhin Sinha, spokesperson of the BJP, Lokesh Jindal, leader of the Congress party. Lokesh Jindal, want to begin with you first. When Mehbooba Mufti says so, when the Congress leaders are saying, why are we denying the Chinese incursion? Are we denying what the Indian troops have done? The Indian armed forces have fought hand-to-hand combat that the defense minister has spoken about. It's one thing to not believe the defense minister. Are we now not even believing our Indian forces?
Look, when we are talking about China, we have a hostile neighbor which is pursuing a doctrine of active defense. So, irrespective of whether we are having peace at the border or we are having open skirmishes, we have to be careful that there is an active defense policy pursued by China. Now, China, with a budget of annually around $230 billion for its defense, and comparing it with India, which is meager $50 billion, and about half of the military personnel now we expect the government to be more fair to our armed forces. Now you cannot say that our armed forces, which are fighting with bare hands,
but who is being unfair to the armed forces? Is it the opposition that is questioning the version of events?
We cannot hail that, okay, our armed forces were able to give a bloody nose to the Chinese, so hail them. No, the government has to be way more concerned with respect to what is the state of affairs. We need to provide them with far better material, ammunition, as well as other forms of ability so that they can tackle that front. At the grassroots, the armed forces, their morale are high because they have an intense feeling of nationalism, but the government is being apathetic. Look at the present track record of the government. Has
the government is working towards
of
infrastructure in these areas that have been ignored for the last so many years. So, Hind Sinha, do you want to come in here that the government has not done enough? We are not really questioning the braves, but there is Chinese incursion. The Chinese are taking over the land of India and the Jawans are not able to respond because of the government. This is the charge of the opposition leaders.
Well, you know, I find it very amusing when somebody says nothing has been done on the defense front, because defense is one of the biggest turnarounds has been in the defense sector. I think the PLA schemes have completely turned around the defense sector. Companies like HAL, which used to be vilified by Rahul Gandhi, today are the leading defense exporters across the globe. But coming to the present situation, number one, I don't think Mehbooba Mufti has the credibility to speak on such issues. Somebody who has completely, who has never stood by the army. Secondly, you compare the present situation with the UPA era, where the Defense Minister A.K. Antony would say that we are purposely not developing infrastructure in the border states because that is our best defense against China. So from there on, if you see the way we have withstood Chinese incursion in Doklam and sent them and packed them back, if you see the way we have handled, our forces have handled Galwan, and if you see the way our forces have handled the present crisis in Arunachal Pradesh, it is nothing short of incredible. We have given complete freedom to our armed forces to decide the course of action depending on the situation, and I think they have acted with a lot of maturity. But by constantly casting aspersions, the opposition leaders are trying to vilify armed forces, which is absolutely unacceptable.
That's right, because the claim that has been made time and again is that the forces have not been able to respond to the Chinese incursions, that they are not being allowed to answer, that the government is silent on the Chinese incursions, and China knows that the government can't speak up because of these political reasons. So does that mean what the troops are doing on ground? Before I come to you, I just want to bring in Lieutenant General Raj Kadian as well, because you would be best placed to answer on the infrastructure, especially on the boost to the armed forces that have been given in the last few years that we are seeing, especially in the areas around Tawang as well, the kind of boost that has been given to the armed forces.
Mrs. Mehbooba Mufti is a politician and she is out of power. It is understandable that she will make a statement that is eyeball catching. The statement has no meaning, no relation to reality. This video is not of the recent incident, because that took place at 3 o'clock at night. So this is shown in daylight. But let me come back to the orders for the army. The army is deployed there to defend our territory. Army does not, as a part of our national policy, violate the LAC or initiate any violence. But when the Chinese do it, and they've done it often, using non-lethal weapons, rods spiked with nails, when they do it, there are no restrictions placed on our soldiers, and there are no holds barred. We have been thrashing them time and again, including this video. This may be of a different occasion. So this to say that our soldiers have their hands tied behind and are restricted from responding to violence is absolutely untrue. This is propaganda and very unfortunate. Our soldiers are taller, stronger than the Chinese, man to man, and they have been thrashing them good and proper in every encounter that has taken place on the initiation of China. We have always been responding. But going beyond that, I think Chinese have done it all too often. We are confronting a country that does not respect any agreement, does not follow any protocol, And when confronted with the truth, they say, no, we had just sent a normal patrol, which is absolutely false. The time has come, instead of the Chinese initiating violence, we need to be more aggressive. I mean, to behave with a gentlemanly person who does not respect any normal behavior is not really what I call culture.
Lokesh Jindal, so coming from the armed forces, our hands are not tied. We are well prepared to answer the Chinese each time there is a provocation. Would you believe it now that it comes from the armed forces? We have spoken about the situation on ground, getting you ground reports of what's happening, hearing it from them. Do you now believe it?
When we talk about the Galwan Valley incident, at that point of time, one soldier himself reported that we were having lesser motorboats and docks for the Pangong Tso Lake and its maneuvering. And it was only in 2022 that the government decided to increase the docks and motorboats for the Jawans so they could patrol that entire lake area. The point is the government has to be prepared. Our policies, they have to be prospective. I mean, it should be the policies must be designed prior to imminent threat and danger that is taking place. Now, the government over here, it waits for a tragedy, it waits for a disaster to take place, it waits for a mistake, and after that comes up with certain corrective measures. That's not policy making. That's a form of a response that the government does. So over here, what I intend to say is the government, it has been 8 years, but what has the government come up with? Has it reformed the nuclear policy? No. The integrated theater command system, which was proposed, had it been put into place, had it been given some of a modification? No. When he talked about Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL is nowhere comparable to Norinco, which is there with the China. So the point is, there is a need for defense facility upgradations. There is, when you talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, these have all been propagandas. It has failed to deliver. The point is, let us deliver.
Let us for the HAL to get more projects. Have you forgotten that completely? In fact, as you were speaking as well, Tuhin Sinha all smiles when you made that statement. Tuhin.
I think Mehbooba's statement is
I
very
don't know,
unfortunate.
Who you entertain in the name of... I don't think people should be allowed to comment on defense issues with such casual behavior. These are very serious issues. Those people who could not crack a single defense deal without the involvement of brokers, they are lecturing us on our defense preparedness, and you are entertaining it.
What
I think we should have a more serious debate.
But look at the statements that have come in from the Congress leaders. It is the top leaders of the Congress party who have made such statements. So Veerappa Moily, who has been a defense minister himself, has said that Jawans are not being given a free run. And, this is what has... These are the claims not being made by somebody here, but these are the top leaders of the Congress party of Mehbooba Mufti who are making these statements.
You should revisit you should revisit A.K. Antony's own, speeches in Parliament.
Sir, A.K. Antony is a decade old. Please talk about the present.
Developing infrastructure in Arunachal Pradesh because number two. So you are mentioning A.K. Antony. The anchor just mentioned A.K. Antony. So the point is that this is the hypocrisy of the Congress party. Pre-2014, there were tons of incursions, at least 400 incursions between 2009 and 2014. What were they doing? And they were cutting deals with the Communist Party of China. So I don't think they are qualified to do it.
Okay, I just want to mention what the Congress party and now, of course, Mehbooba Mufti have been saying that there has been Chinese incursion, that China has taken over the Indian...
No, I want to respond to Mr. Tawang Sinha. See, Mr. Tawang, when we are talking about the Indian armed forces...
I don't want to be here with this idiot. I don't want to be here with this idiot. Get him out.
Not get personal. Don't stoop to the level of taking personal statements. Lieutenant General Raj Kadyan, would you want to come in here? Because, the politics of it aside, finally it comes down to whether questions are being raised on the forces or not. In this case, when the political leaders are raising such questions, saying that there has been incursion, but the government has not been able to do anything, that the hands of the armed forces are tied, these are questions not being raised on the government. Let's be very clear about that. These are not questions that are being raised on the government. Politics of it completely aside, these are questions that are being raised on the forces.
Mehbooba's statement is condemnable. It just needs to be ignored and thrown in the bin. I can speak with authority, having served in the army for more than 40 years, that there are no restrictions ever placed on the soldiers to defend their country. More so when the Chinese have attacked and there is skirmish taking place, soldiers have full freedom, except that we don't fire. That Chinese also don't do. But using what we call today melee weapons, we have also used our rods with spikes. We did it in Tawang. So, but there is no restriction to say that hands are tied or they are prohibited from using force. Is absolutely divorced from reality. This is unfortunate. I don't know, soldiers will listen to it and laugh at it.
I just want to, we're playing out these reactions as well that have been coming in. Mehbooba Mufti is saying Jawans have been beaten up, not allowed to retaliate. And this comes at a time when our Jawans have responded to the Chinese. And it was a pre-planned attack. Remember, we've got you details of how there were about 350 to 400 PLA soldiers who tried to attack, but the Indian soldiers responding and how. And they were forced to retreat as well. Mehbooba Mufti claiming that PLA has occupied our land in Arunachal, but the government is saying nothing about it. Veerappa Moily saying Chinese have entered India. India is trying to hide it. Nasir Hussain, another Congress leader, saying how long can we deny the Chinese incursion? So these are not words of commending the Indian armed forces because of the fight back to the Chinese. Lokesh, this is questioning very clearly not of the government but of the forces.
See, it's open that about 1,000 square kilometer of our land was taken away by the Chinese. So the area that was being patrolled by the Indian armed forces is now under Chinese occupation. That buffer zone has gone out of our hands. The point is the government, we have immense pride in our army. We hail the army, we hail the brave soldiers of our army. But the government must do its bit. The government must provide a level playing field for our armed forces so that they can push the Chinese out of the frontier. But then what has the government done so far? It has not done adequately. In fact, right now it has woken up that, okay, there is a Chinese threat at our border.
Okay, so these are not questions that are being raised on the army. We hail the army, but these are questions, pointed questions only to the government. Very quickly, Tuhin, please respond to that. In fact, the opposition has been saying time and again that the government is scared of even a discussion on China.
This is not a government that will cede even an inch of land. Unlike the way the Congress government had ceded Aksai Chin, we will not cede an inch of land. That is a commitment to the country. Any other thing can be answered by the senior defense personnel on your show. But frivolous charges by the opposition need not be entertained the way you are entertaining for the last 15 minutes.
Okay, but are these frivolous charges when these are the top leaders of the opposition who are making such statements, questioning them? The defense minister has, of course, set the record straight on that, thanking our guests for joining us.